So it's a Saturday at the weekend, and I've got to move out of the apartment that I live in with my partner or ex-partner of nearly 4 years. Let me just close the door because it's a bit noisy. Okay, hopefully that's a bit better sound-wise. So we're ending the relationship, and I am moving out next weekend. So I'm using the opportunity today to pack my personal belongings, get organised. I went shopping this morning to get some cardboard boxes, but I just feel very emotional. You know, the emotions just oscillate up and down, up and down. 1 minute I'm excited for the new chapter, and the next minute I am crying in the shower like I was about 10 minutes ago. So yes, it's a very trying time for the nerves, and I'm going to do my best to pack up as much as I can today. I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself to get too much done, because today is just day one, and I have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 days to pack up all of my stuff. You can probably see boxes in the background. I've actually been collecting boxes from Marley Spoon, which is like a food subscription service. Like, I didn't originally plan to collect them to move out, I just didn't want to throw them away, so they're actually coming quite useful. But yeah, I can't believe this is like my first foray into vlogging or content creation off the cuff. So I do hope this is watchable and makes for good content. But the reason why I'm filming it is just as a kind of like a personal journal, so I can look back at it in the future and see hopefully how far I've come, because life is never linear and there's going to be challenges along the way. And I feel like this end of this chapter of my relationship is hopefully the beginning of a new exciting time. So it's quite hard to see it that way now, but I'm hoping as the days and weeks and months go by, things will get better. So I'm going to start packing and see how I get on.
It's past 4 p.m. by the time I muster the energy to make a start. Packing is literally the last thing I want to do. This is when it all becomes real, when reality hits me like a train, and I realize this chapter is well and truly over. It's time to unmake my little tiny nest and leave the partner I shared it with. I didn't expect any part of this breakup to be plain sailing, but physically separating out my belongings and packaging them up was tough. If you think about it logically, packing should be simple. You place items into boxes, tape the boxes shut, and then you move on. This was not my reality today. Every time I opened up a box and picked something up, it felt like I was holding a memory in my hands instead of just an object. The cute plastic princess tiara from my 36th birthday, the national flags we waved together from my citizenship ceremony. All the memories flooding back to a time when splitting up never even crossed our minds. And then my mind would drift further back to a life before we met. Cozy moments with old friends, crazy travel adventures, and memories of my immediate family back home on the other side of the world. It was so strange how an object could just catapult you back through the years in a single heartbeat. The things I thought would be easy to just throw into a cardboard box carried so much mental weight. It was like each thing was made of stone. And by the way, for anyone watching this that happens to be a sentimental soul and likes to keep every birthday card, every Christmas card, every love note, do not read through them as you're packing to leave a relationship. I know the temptation and procrastination is difficult to overcome, but trust me when I say don't do it. Your central nervous system will thank you for it. I found that every item I picked up to pack or box I opened to sort through felt like reopening a chapter of us. Some pages were sweet, some were painful, some I wish I could just tear out and forget. I'd catch myself pausing for too long, holding on to something for too long, staring at it like it could give me the answers, like if I looked hard enough, the memories would explain why we didn't make it. But the memories never had answers for me. They only reminded me of the good that was now gone. I found the constant mental goodbyes beyond exhausting. Goodbye to memories I knew I would never be able to build on with new ones. Goodbye to the little scraps of our life that were barely anything at the time, but completely magnified times 1,000 now. And that's probably what makes this process so draining. It's not the lifting or the sorting or the packing of boxes. It's the constant tug of war between remembering and letting go, between wanting to hold on just a little longer and knowing I can't. Living with an ex is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. It's like being stuck in a strange parallel universe. Two people still sharing a home, but no longer sharing a life. The relationship is over, but the logistics just don't make sense anymore. So you keep bumping into each other on the way to the bathroom or kitchen, in spaces that you once filled together. For 3 months, this was my reality. 3 months of brushing past him in the kitchen as I did my laundry. 3 months of him hearing my footsteps on the floorboards and pretending he didn't notice. 3 months of closed doors and withdrawal. All the little reminders dotted around the apartment that indicated we were a couple once. The photos, the notes on the fridge, the future plans scribbled on the calendar. They all felt like tiny little knives piercing my already torn heart. The hardest part was the normal routines and carrying on like nothing had happened, like our world hadn't just fallen apart. To hear him get ready for work like it was any other day, to listen to him laugh on the phone to others, to smell the evening meals he cooked for himself that we once shared. It was as if I'd disappeared. I'd become invisible in our own home, and a lot of the time, this was just too painful a feeling to bear. And the silence, oh my gosh, the silence just grew thicker between us each day that passed. It wasn't the comfortable silence we once had, where being in the same room was enough. Nope, it was a heavy claustrophobic silence, loaded with all the things we just weren't saying. If the silence could speak, it would yell out all that resentment, the bitterness, and all the hurt. There were so many moments over the 3 months when I just wanted to scream into the silence to break it momentarily. Other times I just felt like shrinking into myself, to vanish so I wouldn't have to be squeezed by the weight of it anymore. Living together after a breakup isn't just awkward, it's emotionally exhausting. Being constantly reminded of what you've lost, but also painfully aware that the person you've lost is asleep in the bedroom next to you. It was so odd for my brain to compute, and having to unlearn all the things that came with a relationship. The communication, the affection, the intimacy, etc. was really, really tough. Coping with the situation I had found myself in became his own strategy in itself. Some days I avoided him completely or stayed out for hours to avoid being under the same roof. Other days I'd let myself drift into memories, tricking myself into believing things weren't really over. And then there were days where I just felt emotionally overwhelmed and was barely able to function. It was like living in an emotionally charged waiting room, waiting for him to leave, waiting for me to leave, thinking we'd both stay. The endless limbo wore me down in ways I didn't even notice until later. The emotional tension, the questions that were left unanswered, the constant proximity to someone I loved but no longer had, it all took its toll. When people talk about breakups, they usually talk about the leaving part or the heartbreak and loneliness that follows afterwards. But no one really talks about what it's like to keep living with the person you've already said goodbye to. It's its own genre of heartbreak where you're virtually reliving the grief over and over again like Groundhog Day. It's probably one of the most painful experiences I've ever been through, and that's saying a lot at my ripe old age of 39. But sometimes you just don't get a choice. Living with an ex after a split isn't graceful or without frustrations and tears. All you can do when you're stuck in the in-between is keep living it until you don't have to anymore.
So I'm on day 2 of Project Pack Up and Leave. So yesterday I got quite a bit done. Got my cup of tea here. Have a little sip. I got quite a bit done in terms of the living room, sorted out all the little cubby storage areas and started on the kitchen. So today I'm hoping to do these wardrobes, empty out all the clothes and do some shoes, pack up some shoes. And then I think after that I should be about half done or just over half done. That's the majority of my stuff. So again, it's been a bit of an emotional day. I was crying in the shower again. But do you know what? I think it's the songs that I'm listening to. I was listening to, I think it's a Billie Eilish song that was really emotive. And I just literally burst into tears with overwhelm of what's going on. So yeah, it's been a bit of a tough day, but I'm hoping just being productive will help eliminate the intrusive thoughts that keep popping in and out. And I think it's just the reality of it, you know, grieving the end of a relationship that you invested nearly 4 years of your life in. So yeah, it is a lot. But hopefully onto fresh new beginnings. It's just hard to see it all at this early stage. So yeah, I better keep going with the uncoupling. I'm hoping that I'll be able to sort through some clothing items as well, because there's a lot in here that I don't actually wear. So hopefully at the same time I can put some clothes aside to donate or throw away if they're too tatty. So I'll get started with that. I also need to hang up some washing and take my supboard out from the balcony because I put it out there to dry. I hadn't washed it in like 3 months, so it's full of seawater. So I'll take that in and then come into this office stroke wardrobe area to clear clothes and things and start packing those away. But yeah, it's going as well as can be expected. I'm being quite productive, but I'm just glad I'm not having to rush, and you know, I can do this quite slowly without having to be in a bit of a panic about it. It's not like the movers are coming tomorrow. I think I've got 4 days, 5 days until the moves arrive. Not that I've actually booked them in yet. I'm hoping that I can do an ad on like Airtasker or something tonight to get some removalists to help me move. But I know I definitely want to move when I pick up the keys to the new apartment this coming Friday. So hopefully someone will have availability to give me a hand. But I'd better get packing and keep going with it all. Yeah, let's see how we go for the rest of the day, shall we?
I can't lie. The thought of moving into a new apartment alone after living as one half of a couple for 4 years is a scary prospect. Despite the months and months of mental torture living under the same roof with someone I have no relationship with, I'm actually more terrified at the thought of moving out, which sounds crazy and completely irrational, I know. Moving on and starting over sounds so clean in theory. A fresh space, a blank page, a chance to rebuild something new. You're bombarded with the usual platitudes like, it'll be a new adventure, or you'll love the freedom. And yes, on some level, they're absolutely correct. But in the days leading up to moving into my own apartment, what I mostly felt wasn't excitement, it was sadness sprinkled with bouts of crippling anxiety. Part of me didn't want to make the move into a new apartment that was unfamiliar to me in so many ways. A different location away from our usual haunts, bare walls, empty rooms. I imagined it would even smell different. But most of all, I wouldn't have the person I'd loved for 4 years. I didn't want any of this freedom that moving presented to me. As I packed up my belongings, I wondered if my new place would ever feel as warm or as cozy like this apartment had. How would I cope living alone after 4 years of always having someone else nearby and thinking they'd be around forever? What if the silence I felt in my new apartment was more claustrophobic than the silence I'd just escaped? It was as if there was a treadmill in my brain with all these questions running in circles. I worried about the normal day-to-day stuff too. Could I afford to live alone in the area I wanted? How would I manage my finances on one income? Would my neighbourhood be friendly? Where would I do my food shopping? Underneath those surface level concerns, something deeper was eating away at me. The sheer panic of having to rebuild a life from scratch at the age of 39. It felt so overwhelming, and in those moments I couldn't piece together what my life would look like. I didn't ever imagine I'd be packing alone. If I was to ever leave here, I pictured it would be hand in hand with the person I'd spent the last 4 years of my life with. Not this time. The rational part of my brain knows moving on is necessary. I couldn't heal in a place haunted by constant reminders. I couldn't grow if I kept one foot in the past. Starting over at 39 wasn't optional, it was survival. But survival doesn't mean it feels good in the moment. It all just felt so scary, shaky, and uncertain. My mind kept looping back to the same anxious thought. I don't know if I can do this. But here's the thing about anxiety. It doesn't mean you can't move forward. It just means you carry that knot in your stomach or that tension in your shoulders while you do. And that's exactly what I did as I built out my cardboard boxes, sorted through my clothes, and taped them up one by one. It wasn't neat, nor was it easy, but every box I sealed was proof that even through the fear, I was still moving forward. Saying goodbye isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just the sound of things being folded, the scrape of hangers, the rip of tape. It's in those mundane little actions that the finality of it all sinks in. This apartment, these walls, this floor, this space, held 4 years of love, laughter, arguments, routines, and now it's just me, surrounded by piles of clothes and half-filled boxes, trying to find the courage to let it all go. It feels surreal standing in the same place where you spent so much of your 30s, knowing that it will never be yours in the same way again. The bed where we once fell asleep side by side will soon belong to someone else. The kitchen where we cook together will echo with different conversations, different footsteps. I'll walk out and someone new will walk in. Life moves on, even when you're not ready. And yet, as painful as it is, there's also a strange kind of relief in goodbye. Because goodbye means I made it here. Goodbye means I'm strong enough to close the door, even if my hands are shaking while I do it. Goodbye means I've survived the silence, the invisibility, the anxiety, and I'm still here, still moving, still trying. That's enough to carry me into the next phase of life.